Hello, everyone. I hope you can see me and hear me. Welcome to Reading with Pictures, Comics in the Classroom 2002. We are very excited that everyone is here to kick off this event. My name is Tracy Edmonds. I'm the chair of the event for Reading with Pictures. I would like to thank our sponsors for their support of this event, Pixton and Scholastic. We thank them very much for making this possible. And I would also like to thank our incredibly hardworking volunteers for their hours and hours of behind the scenes work. A quick note on navigation when you're in the lobby for this event. If you look for the little 3 lines in the upper right corner, the little hamburger menu, and you click that, and then you click sessions, you should be able to find the panels that you're looking for, and you can click on those to go in. And now it is my absolute privilege to introduce Jamar Nicholas. Jamar is an award-winning Philadelphia-based artist and educator, dedicating his career to helping young people realize the power of visual narrative and his sweet dog. His latest work is Leon the Extraordinary from Scholastic Graphics. There it is. It's a wonderful book, and I really believe that this book will touch so many kids' lives. I'm looking forward to hearing what Jamar has to tell us about his creativity and his work with kids. Thank you, everyone. There will be a Q&A. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you should be able to click Q&A and put your questions into that chat. With no further ado, here's Jamar.
Thank you so much, Tracy, and thanks everyone for all of your hard work getting us to tonight. I know it's always very nail-bitey when we have things like this, but it's for the greater good, and everybody's doing a fantastic job. So give yourselves a hand. If any of you are familiar with me, the person, and not me, the cartoonist, I like to talk a lot. So I have a prepared part, and then if there's time left, I have some just kind of free flowy things, and maybe Tracy and I can kick the ball around a little bit. But let's get started. Thank you all so much for having me tonight. I'm very fortunate and also humbled to present for you. We're in a very interesting timeline, as you may agree, for better or worse, but hopefully the better. In this time stream, somehow, comic books became so popular they became pop culture. A little background on myself. Growing up in West Philly, we'll save the Fresh Prince song for later in the program. In the early 70s, cartoons and comics most certainly had their foothold with people of a certain age. And the magic of cartooning ensorcelled me early. I was a young reader. My family tells stories about me at the age of 3 reading billboards passing by the windows during city bus rides with my grandmother, going to 69th Street to go shopping one way, and then on the way home reading, without much comprehension, mind you, the adverts that lined the crevices where the wall met the roof of the bus. Murray's Meats, ground beef, see line through it, 35 a pound. Feeling stressed? Cal God, take me away. Maybe it was inevitable I'd fall in love with the comic strips inside our Philadelphia Inquirer. Words were always exciting to me, but the addition of cartoons became a deal breaker for little Jamar. I had an almost unhealthy obsession for comic strips. My grandmother would get the daily paper from our corner store. In New York, you may call them bodegas. You get what I'm saying. A block and a half away from our house, and when I would meet her at the door when she returned, I'd immediately be served the funnies, where I'd find some floor to lay on, spread out, and take a ride. I was enthralled with Dagwood Bumstead and his wife Blondie, who I thought was odd. Blondie was drawn as this almost porcelain fragile figure of a 50s housewife, and Dagwood, with unmistakable swoops of a pen line, had wings in his hair. I'll never understand his hair to this day. Giant clown-sized shoes and just one solitary button in the middle of his shirt. Also, Dennis the Menace, whose artist Hank Ketchum is still one of my biggest cartooning influences, was holding a master class daily in cartooning with his 4-panel strips, creating mood and depth with the addition of black areas and texture with making wavy vertical lines go up Mr. Wilson's cardigan. which now look like a cable knit sweater. I can't forget to mention these cartoons being developed into other media. I think you'd be surprised that this isn't new. Like all of these Marvel movies and stuff, we had that stuff back then, it just didn't look as good. As we all watched a lot of old black and white sitcoms, complete with laugh tracks for Dennis. And if I recall, the Blondie movies, there were Blondie movies, which they tried to recreate Dagwood's nutty hairstyle on a human being. Time will tell if that worked or not. I also vividly remember Gary Trudeau's Doonesbury. Well, I have visual aids. Look at that. How old is this? This might be from 79, 80. I'm not sure. There's one. And here's another one. look how old that is. That's wild. A complex political comic strip that was, weirdly enough, my favorite comic strip. Though I had no idea what they talked about or why this dude named Richard Nixon was so important, I sure did like the art. Maybe I was a weird kid in retrospect, but it was clear that this stuff was connecting to me, communicating to me using visuals, the art, verbally through reading, spatially, cementing these stories inside a very rigid container of the single up to 4-panel borders. And maybe the most important to me and the comics readers is temporally, as time passes between those panels right in front of you. It's the only way to explain Garfield discovering a piping hot pan of lasagna on the counter, and then one panel over, it's empty. Time just happened. The power of comics win again. But this power, it's not known to everyone. If you're new to reading comics of any stripe, be it manga or web comics or comic strips or just plain old Batman comics, you may have one time or maybe know someone, let's call them a friend, it definitely wasn't you, who had a hard time reading a comic book. Well, wait, am I supposed to read the words first and then look at the art? Yes. Oh, okay. So do I read this panel first and do I read the next panel? Yes. You do all of those things. This doesn't come naturally. And even think about how much work goes into reading, enjoying, collecting, devouring, and dreaming about the next chapter or series or volume of a graphic novel seems like quite a task, right? What we talked about so far doesn't strike me as a lesser than form of reading. Seems, dare I say it, pretty advanced. But I'm well aware of some educators' issues with comics, graphic novels, any sequential narrative storytelling in the classroom. The power of comics hasn't been broken under the noses yet for them to inhale. But you already know that, and that's why we're here tonight, right? So what can we do to help those among us who don't get comics, don't see the appeal of graphic novels? I don't think we'll bring them in by handing them a stack of books and saying, hey, these are really good, you should read these. I think it's more nuanced than that. I believe the power of this conference is helping us all find effective ways of finding those solutions, which in turn help our students. Comics are fun, right? They're also educational, they're enlightening, they're eye-opening, engaging, heart-rending, and gut-busting. Comics have shed the skin of the tired bam, pow, zap trope. Man, I'm tired of hearing that. As the rest of the world has finally caught up and caught on to the power of comics, and if you have students who are already engaged with graphic novels, great. Nothing to see here, move along. But if you also have reluctant readers in your classroom, students who are just not feeling it, they may get moved by storytelling in a different delivery system. Educators, I salute you. I come from a long line of teachers and I know how hard it can be, but as an educator myself, we all know how great it is to reach a student when a kid gets it, when that light bulb goes off, when that door gets unlocked and after fumbling through our key rings, we find the right one that fits, and that means the world to a teacher. Comics may be that key for them, as it was for me way back in West Philadelphia, where I was born and raised. I'm not going to sing anymore. Thank you very much. so that was my little written piece. And then Tracy, if you'd like to entertain me with some back and forth. I'd love to talk some more off the top of the head. And Tracy asked me a question a little earlier about like, what's important to you right now? And that question just opened the floodgates to me, because in this new space as the artist, illustrator, and creator of Leon the Extraordinary, and partnering with Scholastic Graphics, Leon is in front of a lot of eyeballs, and I have a responsibility. No one told me this in a back room or something like this, but I have a responsibility as an educator and as somebody that's creating content for young people to make sure I don't want to just make cheeseburgers. I don't want to make broccoli too, right? And you have to eat your broccoli. And I feel like the way I tell stories is that I'm kind of giving you, well, it may seem like it's covered with cheese, but it's still broccoli under there. I think that all of us as creators or educators or parents or guardians have a huge responsibility to listen to kids, right? A big part of my childhood, and probably a lot of people who have gray in their face like me, we came from a world where you were supposed to be seen and not heard. And somewhere in there, I think we forget that kids have opinions. They know what's going on. They see what's up. Just nobody wants to hear what they think about it, you know? So to be able to hand a kid a book where somebody's speaking their language to them and maybe, you know, quantifying some of the things that they thought about, but just didn't have a way to kind of, you know, translate it or communicate it. They can get it in a book, or feeling like you're seen or heard is a great power of cartooning, where I can draw kids that feel like they look like kids. Leon looks like a kid cosplaying and going to school every day. There's fantastic in the normalcy of what I'm trying to do. So, you know, I don't take any of those things lightly. And I'm really here for the challenge. And I think it's really important that, especially with a conference like this, and we're all here for the same reason, right? We want to figure out how to make sure that this great thing we have in comics and strips and graphic novels stays around, and people who aren't used to reading it maybe picks one up, I think, after some education, because that's what I talked about in my written part, on how to read this stuff. One of my favorite books, I don't have it in front of me, it's called How to Read Nancy by Mark Newgarden. And it was an essay. It started out as an essay and it turned into like a full-blown hardcover book about the mechanics inside the wristwatch of how cartoons work. A very easy panel strip of Nancy and Sluggo. If you break away Nancy but leave Sluggo, what he's looking at it still makes sense. But if you put Nancy in and take Sluggo out, it still makes sense. There's so many components to storytelling that is just easily glossed over if you're not paying attention. But it's a really deep rooted way of communicating we've developed. And I think you have to give it its breath in the classroom. It's not just, I don't know, stick figures with word balloons over top of them. There's a lot more there to be discovered. So
Yeah.
We could talk some more, but I don't want to just riff.
No, that's great. Actually, I'm kind of on the same wavelength as you are. You know, people talk about, you know, we hear it all the time, teachers and parents and administrators saying, oh, comics are too easy. There's not enough text. It's easy reading. It's not easy. You know, there's a whole visual language there that kids need to understand in order to read and really understand what they're reading. So it's something to dig into for sure. I wanted to ask you, because I'm personally curious about sort of the origin of Leon. Where did the idea come from and how did it develop? And what's sort of the backstory on this great book?
Oh, thank you, Tracy. So really the origin story of Leon is I created Leon. It may have been 20 something years ago. He's been around for a while. He looked a little different in some older iterations. But he was kind of an offshoot of one of my very first self-published comics I was doing at the time called the Jamar Chronicles, which there's a character that looked like me who was jumping through dimensions trying to save the world in the universe. It was a lot before the Rick and Morty stuff that everybody knows about, Rick and Morty. In one of the dimensions he was going to discover, and I have all the notes for it, I didn't get to that issue, was he was going to stumble onto this universe, and every universe has a hero in it. This kid who was just in this Gotham City type atmosphere, and there was no Batman. So we kind of find out that something happened to his mentor or his father figure or whatever, and now he's kind of stuck in this cave with all of this fantastic stuff that he's too young to use. So they were going to kind of team up and fight crime. That was the genesis of Leon. I had his name and I had some visuals of it, but I just kind of put that on the shelf for a long time. And then maybe 5, 6, 7 years later, I started developing it more. As that's one of the cool things about ideas, is that sometimes you may come up with something, but it's just not time to do anything with it. So you just write it on the back of the electric bill and you put it away for later. So I brought him back out, and now it's kind of changed into this single parent, only child relationship with Leon and his mother. Mm-hmm. A lot of that is based off of my real life. My mother, who passed in 2015, I grew up, it was just basically her and myself living in 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, and just it was us against the world. So as things developed with Leon, and I at one point I did it as a daily comic strip, which is interesting. And this thing, they when you go to the supermarket and they have kind of like the penny savers and those baskets in front of bubblegum machines before you go in.
Right.
In this magazine called Delaware County Magazine, it was a monthly kind of a coupon gazette type of magazine. And a friend of mine was doing editorial and said, "Hey, do you want to do a comic strip?" I was like, "Sure, I have a great kids idea." So I started developing it, and it was really hard to tell a story when you get one strip every month. So there's not a lot you can pack into that. Yeah. And people really started to like it. Oh wow, I really like this. Oh, this character's interesting. Oh, he's like a superhero kid, but what's his powers? Like, oh, he doesn't have any superpowers. What? that doesn't make any sense. And from there, I took a break, and then I came back several years later, and I created a graphic novel called Leon, Protector of the Playground. And that is when I finally put Leon into the world. And lightning hit the intersection of preparedness and all those other crossroads. They all lined up, and people loved it. Everywhere I went, I sold out of the books. Won a few awards. Won the Dwayne McDuffie Award for diversity in 2018, and it made me really think closely about what kids need. Yeah. Right. So it went from being not like a selfish thing, but kind of like, I have this thing. People really seem to be into it, and I liked kind of digging into these old memories, as I'm a big fan of imagination. I'm sure a lot of people that are here tonight want to protect their imagination at all costs. And what we talked about a little earlier, Tracy, about being a kid and feeling like you didn't have a voice and all those things. I remember those feelings very vividly. And Leon kind of acts on some of those things that I couldn't say at the time. And I wanted to give a character back to kids that felt the way they do. So if the dialogue feels really good to you when you read Leon, or you love the relationship between Leon and his buddy Carlos,
Yeah,
and they have their own,
their own thing.
they have their own thing. They do their own thing.
Yeah.
I love those parts of telling stories with kids. They have their own language. I call it kid world. The rules are different in kid world than they are in grown up world. I just really wanted to showcase that and kind of champion the spirit of being a kid in the book. And then from there, Scholastic came along. So I'm very fortunate to be in a place where, now I have a series at Graphics with more Leon adventures. And it's great. It's really great.
I'm excited. I got to the end of it and I was like, well, I need more, please.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know.
Is the next one already under development?
Yes, it's behind me under a lot of papers. I'm working on number 2 right now. And, the book just launched, the book birthday was on the 4th. So it was like at the beginning of last week. And, just kind of like watching the groundswell happen it's really exciting. And, it's hard to not smile when you hear a kid say, "Oh, I've read the whole thing 3 times." Like, well, the book's pretty thick, kid. How did you do that? I read it. Where's the next one? Like, whoa, hold on.
That happens all the time. Yeah.
Slow down. I need some time to draw the next one. But, really excited. And, everybody's been so wonderful. I'm loving how it's going.
Yeah, and I know that happens all the time with kids creators, especially with graphic novel creators. Kids love this stuff and they eat it up, and they read it over and over and over, but they want more.
Yeah.
Leave you alone until more.
The kids are like,
yeah, hello, where is it?
Let's go.
Yeah.
What are you doing? No, it's fantastic. Thank you.
So somebody asked in our Q&A, what themes does your book focus on that you think would make for good classroom discussions? I did notice in the book, you have this wonderful, world shown through the eyes of a child, through Leon's eyes. The story is basically focused on him and what he goes through in his regular life that might be like a child's life. And then also they live in a world where things are different and there are superheroes. So it's a little bit of both mixed together. But I think you really do a great job of talking about social emotional issues and talking about decision-making and those kind of things. Can you tell us a little bit about how those things work into the book and what you were intending there?
Sure, thanks. Well, some things that are really integral to the stories I'm trying to tell in Leon are, and some of these seem really subtle, and I've brought this up to people and they've gone, "Oh wow, I guess I guess that happened. I didn't pay attention." Is our kind of natural love of violence, and as educators, nobody wants to, we don't like that stuff, but the culture loves violence, right? And one of my the most interesting thing that I've looked at over the past 10 years is that as pop culture is just devouring superhero comics, right? The MCU, Avengers, all that. I love that stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here saying it's bad. I'm the first person in line with my ticket. But when that applies to kids, I think there's a little interesting piece that we're not really thinking about. And I have this, if you'll let me tell this story real quick.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, it might have been a back to school ad of some, I don't know if it was Target or whatever, it doesn't matter. So, the school bus pulls up to the curb and the door opens and these superheroes jump off the bus. Iron Man jumps down and, now the costumes that you get at Target look like real we didn't have that stuff back when we were kids. So Iron Man jumps down, Hulk jumps down with his Hulk hands, and Spider-Man, and they like run off to school and they're all doing their superhero poses. We all love that stuff. But really at the root of superhero comics, I'm kind of picking on superhero comics, is that superheroes solve their problems with punching people, right? And I don't want to get myself in hot water. It's not saying that they're bad. I think it's just that's just the the mode of how they handle things. They're larger than life, and they defeat the baddies using their powers and however they see fit. So I created a challenge for myself as somebody who's creating kind of like a superhero kid. I think the first thing you would expect is that, oh, well, I guess when I open this book, Leon's going to be like, hemming up some bullies on a locker and like, giving it to him. But Leon is stuck with this feeling. It's like, well, I know I shouldn't fight, right? Because we shouldn't be fighting. So how am I going to figure this out? And one of the storytelling devices that I use, and I don't think it's a spoiler at any stripe, is the flow chart. So we get to look inside Leon's head. His common sense is tingling, as he says. Now look at that. That's kind of how I remembered the inside of my head feeling. Like when your mother's telling you something and you kind of know that you're going to get in trouble if you don't do it, but there's some dials that are turning around in your head. It's like, well, if I don't get caught, then I won't get in trouble. But wait a minute, what if I just do what she asked? Then I won't be in trouble at all. Well, but that's not fun. Like you're going through this matrix of things in your head. And I wanted to kind of show that in the book. So, he's dealing with, what does it mean to be a hero? What does it mean to have responsibility now that he's getting older? Because that happens really fast with tweens. You go from somebody wiping your nose, all of a sudden you have to wash the dishes and take the trash out. I was like, well, wait a minute, don't I get a say in this? And also friendships. Just navigating friendships is such a big thing. And I feel like with kids, especially with kids, is that a lot of your friendships are made out of circumstance. I happen to live next door to this kid. I get on the same bus with this kid. We both have a Nintendo, and we talk about Nintendo. So what happens later down the road? What keeps a friendship alive after you get past the surface of it? So also that dealing with adults. There's a million things going in it, and especially in Leon the Extraordinary, there's a thing about technology too, and I won't give that away.
And no spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers, but there's a big technology thing in there also. I hope that answered the question.
It absolutely did. I was saying with that flow chart is just genius. I teach first and second grade, and I'm going to use that. We're going to read the book and we're going to make flow charts when we have issues about whether we should, poke our friend sitting next to us. So thank you for that tool.
Thank you. Please do.
Yeah. So switching a little bit from talking about Leon to talk about you. Okay. Someone would like to know, what is your favorite part of the writing or creating process?
Oh, that's a great question. I think because my background is I'm a cartoonist, right? I write, I draw, but I also think visually and I concept visually when I'm doing my work. I usually start with thumbnails, and probably the last thing that happened are me literally putting words in the kids' mouths. So I start with the synopsis, and then I work on my outlines and I write a script. But visually, I'm plotting out the story before all of that, and then the dialogue just kind of like happens. I don't want to say naturally, but after a while, how they say your characters speak to you.
Yeah.
I kind of know what Leon would say to Clementine in this place, or what Chalmers would say. But probably to me is the drawing part. Once I get through all of the unlocked doors to get to the part where I can sit down at the drafting table and just, draw a really good nose. It's a good day if I get a really good nose.
That's the right line.
Yeah, just to get a nice straight line, and then I have a coffee. You know what I mean? So it's still the joy of drawing is prevalent, and that's probably my favorite part is just drawing the books.
Awesome. And then, of course, the flip side of that, what do you find the most challenging?
There's this thing that goes around with cartoonists where somebody will say, "What do you hate drawing?" And everybody says horses. So,
Yeah, I've heard that.
so there's horses, cars, and bicycles. So, inevitably somebody asks you to draw a horse riding a bicycle on a roof of a car.
There you go.
But probably, you know what? Probably the hardest part for me would be, I don't want to say the writing because I enjoy the writing. It may be, oh, here you go. It's the revisions, and I mean revisions as there were a couple of times in the last project where after everything was said and done, like a proofreader would say, "Leon's got 6 fingers on that hand," and I go, "Oh man, how'd that happen?" And you're in such a kind of like a flow state that you're just going with it, and then later you need fresh eyes to go, "Wait a minute, how many? He's got 2 thumbs. Like I didn't mean to draw 2 thumbs." So it's kind of catching your own mistakes later, because sometimes it takes a lot of people to see it, and I don't think that everything I do is perfect. We all have. That's why they make erasers. We all have to revise things, but sometimes I surprise myself by going, "Oh wait, that's right. Clementine has the earrings on, and I forgot to put the." So it's that kind of editing at the end.
Yeah, that's a great note for kids creating their own comics, to let them know nobody's perfect and there's always things that need to be fixed. Do you have any sort of tips or how you go about getting kids creating their own comics?
Sure. This is one of my favorite questions.
Good, go.
So one of my favorite things that I like to tell kids who are interested in creating their own stories is, which this sounds a little boring, is to start paying attention to things. And if you notice, kids will pay a lot of attention to things that are really interesting to them, and they could care less about the other things. So to be a cartoonist, you have to draw everything, and that can be a little daunting. So, sometimes you have to draw a mailbox or a fire hydrant or a pigeon or a bicycle or a horse or a car. You need to know how to do that stuff, and luckily we can figure things out with shapes. That's our secret weapon. But also that you're visually paying attention to your world in a different way that I think adults, we're not good at it. But as kids it's like, well, what are the details of my day? I never thought about that. So and the second part of my answer is, I think journaling is really important. If kids already keep a diary or journal or something like that, that's great. But I would challenge them to try to keep a visual journal or a comic journal. If it's too much in your day because you've got karate and band practice and piccolo lessons or whatever you do, maybe on Friday you spend some time drawing a story of something that happened to you that week. Then you have to kind of recall, well, we went to the froyo place. Well, what did that look like? Oh, right. There was a kid behind the counter and he was shorter than the counter. So that was funny. And then there were the dials on the wall. Like, you're now paying attention to the details of your life in a different way. And then when you're done, years later, you can look back and look at these journals you made and, see the progress you've made over time.
Oh, that's cool. That's a great idea. Actually, I like the idea of a visual journal because a lot of kids are intimidated by doing a lot of writing, especially when they're younger. And maybe a visual journal is a good key to opening that for them.
Yeah. No, that's one of my favorites.
I love it. Thank you. I know you mentioned a few creators, that growing up that you were paying attention to. What about now? Who's out there now that you admire or that you can recommend that we look at their stuff?
Well, you know what? I still love the classics. I was just on Amazon, like clicking on things I can't afford, and I just put them in the wish list because I can buy them. I love Hergé, Tintin or Tintin, depending on where you live. It's just a classic adventure strip. Also, this is really odd because I haven't thought about him in years. I started getting back into King Babar the elephant.
Oh yeah.
You remember
I
Babar?
forgot. I grew up with those books. Yeah.
Right, right. It's like I went in the Wayback Machine. That's where I'm at right now. And it's kind of, in a way, this is like research for me. Like when I'm in between projects, I pick things up and try to study them in a way. Like I'm a big fan of like the Carl Barks Scrooge McDuck comics.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's just very, and I'm sure people in the chat are like, oh, I didn't think you were going to say that.
It's funny how often Scrooge McDuck comes up when you speak with cartoonists. Carl Barks just seems to be everybody's favorite.
Yeah, he's the guy. He still is. There's a mastery of his compositions are fantastic. The cartooniness and roundness of all of the universe is great. If you ever see a Disney car, well, they have these giant like donut tires.
Yeah.
You know, it's fantastic. Also, like I mentioned Hank Ketchum. I'm a big Dennis the Menace fan. So if you pick up, you can probably go on eBay and get those old paperbacks.
Oh yeah.
Little like smelly paperbacks for like a couple bucks. And just if you just look through that work, it's like it is a master class. Like every one of these strips, he's telling a story in one panel, and he's using so many different ways of using an ink line.
Yeah.
And they're all different, and it's fantastic. But let me give a shout out to people who are still around. Also, Jerry Craft. Everybody knows Jerry Craft at this point.
Jerry. Yep.
New Kid's a masterpiece. I'm enjoying Johnny Christmas right now, who Swim Team is a fantastic book.
Yeah.
And I have to give a shout out to my Scholastic cousin Gail Galligan. Freestyle is fantastic.
The yo-yo book. I love that.
Yeah, the yo-yo book, right? Yeah. And I've been on the road, and Gail and I have been at a couple of the same events, and you know, she's fantastic. And please pick up Freestyle when it comes out. You won't be disappointed.
Agreed. Well, we're coming close to the end of our time together. I just wanted to see, you know, what's next for you. It sounds like there's more Leon.
Oh yeah.
Anything else going on? What's going to be? What are you going to be doing?
Well, there's a lot of Leon going on, and I'm also, I guess I'm touring, right? I'm on the road. I have a lot of school visits. Actually, tomorrow I'll be. This is like the plug at the end of Johnny Carson.
Exactly.
I'll be at the Borgata Hotel and Spa. I'm going to be at All Yeah Comics in Harrison, New York tomorrow for a book signing at 12 p.m. If you're in the area, come by. It's a great shop.
Those guys are fun. Those guys are fun.
Yeah, Franco and those guys are amazing. And then next Friday I'll be at Books of Wonder in Manhattan, doing I think it's Gail Galligan and I. We're doing an event at Books of Wonder. I'm very excited. And then I'm in airplanes in November, and you know, it just keeps going.
Just keep traveling.
Yeah, it keeps traveling. Yeah, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's fantastic. This is what I always wanted. So
excellent. And I know that you just mentioned that you do school visits. How would one go about signing up for a school visit with you?
Well, I'm in the middle of getting set up on the Scholastic Author Visit portal. But there is a website that I don't have in front of me that you can go to Scholastic, and they do have I think it's called the Author Visit page. There's a FAQ, and there's also kind of like a fill-in form, like a Google form. You can fill out. My name's not like, I'm not on the list yet, but if you fill out the form and ask for me, they'll get back to you and give you my info.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This was so much fun, and we really appreciate your being here. And thank you very much for speaking with us, and for that all you do for kids, because I can feel your heart, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Tracy, and thanks everyone for hanging out with us tonight. And good luck with the conference. I'm very excited. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you at the next sessions. See you. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tracy. Bye. Bye-bye.